The number one most common ground for divorce in Georgia is that the marriage is irretrievably broken. So in Georgia, they call it irretrievably broken, not irreconcilable differences. It's kind of the same thing. Basically, that we just can't get along and we want a divorce. Some of the other common grounds for divorce are adultery, all right? Habitual drug abuse, cruel treatment. Those are probably your top four grounds for divorce in Georgia. So most of those are pretty straightforward, habitual intoxication, adultery, but cruel treatment, what is that? Well, that can be a number of different things, that could be, extreme yelling, that could be physical violence, and actually adultery is cruel treatment. So anytime that I file a divorce with adultery as grounds, I will also tack on cruel treatment as a grounds of divorce also. How are assets going to be divided in your divorce? Well, basically, if you came into the marriage with something, you're going to come out of the marriage with that. So if you had a car that was bought and paid for when you got married and now you're getting divorced, you're going to get that car that was your separate property. All right? The money that is made from the date of marriage until the date of divorce is all on the table when it comes to the divorce. Even if y'all got separated and are living separately, okay? The court's got to look at everything that has been created financially during the marriage from the efforts of the spouse. One thing that can really confuse those issues as far as what's something you came into the marriage with as opposed to something that was created during the marriage is if there's some mixing. So say, for example, you have this bank account prior to your marriage, all right? And then you get married and you put money from this separate bank account into your account, your new marital bank account. Well, when you take money out of that account, how do you know if you're taking out the marital money or the non-marital money? Well, the court calls that fungible. And so the identity of that money disappears and the court can't work it out. So they're just going to say that that non-marital money was just converted to marital money. All right. Now let's say you've got that non-marital money and you don't open up a new bank account. You just keep working and money keeps going into that account during the marriage. All right. So that's the same kind of thing. Once you've got money that it was made during the marriage mixed with money that was made prior to the marriage, you're done. All that's on the table. Let's say you move out into a separate house. Y'all are separated. If that happens, y'all are probably keeping your assets separate, all right? And the judge looks at the whole picture and divides things equitably. So even though you've got everything on the table, the judge, when it comes to fairness, might say, okay, well, I know that they got separated at this point, so from that point on, it would be fair to do something else than what we do with the assets that were created during the time that they were living together as a couple. And so once we know what the pot of money is that's going to be divided, the judge will divide it equitably. The alternative is, you just agree with your spouse on how it's going to be divided. And that gives you more control over your future as opposed to, putting it in the judge's hands to see what they think is fair. So what is alimony? Are you going to have to pay alimony? And how much alimony if you do have to pay? Alimony, another word for it, is spousal support. So everybody is familiar with child support. So it's basically the same idea. Children need to be supported. Well, sometimes a spouse needs to be supported. Perhaps they don't have the financial earning capabilities of the other spouse because they've been a stay-at-home parent, or um, or they're injured. They've got medical conditions and they've got needs and can't work. Well, uh, those are situations where the spouse needs to be supported. Now, are you going to have to pay alimony in those situations if you've got a spouse in need? Well, that depends on whether or not you've been married for a while. I mean, even if your spouse isn't working and doesn't make as much money as you, and or is disabled and unable to care for themselves, if you've only been married for 6 months, the odds of alimony are going to be very slim. If you've got a long-term marriage and your spouse was taking care of the kids for 18 years, staying at home, and you all talked about it and agreed to that, and now the divorce is happening, and they've got no job skills. They've been out of the job market for 20 years almost. Well, that is a situation where, I hate to say it, you're going to be faced with paying alimony. All right. Unless there are exceptions. Unless your spouse cheats. If you catch your spouse cheating, you're checking their phone at night and they've got a text message from somebody saying, "Ooh, that was real good last night." Yeah, something like that is going to be a bar to alimony. So if you catch your spouse cheating, you won't have to pay alimony. And when it comes to how much alimony, no, that depends on how much money you make and how much the other side makes and how much your expenses are and how much their expenses are. So it's just math. Income minus expenses, how much is left over? Income minus expenses, how much of a deficit is there? All right. So each person's situation is going to be different. And without looking at your pay stubs, your spouse's pay stubs, and your expenses, we can't really give you a number on what we think would be a fair amount of alimony. But once with enough information, we can advise you as far as how much. Divorce does have a big impact on children, but you would be surprised how resilient children can be. At first, it may take some getting used to, but over time, they will get used to it. All right. One key way to help them to get through that transitionary period to a place where they are okay and things are normal again is to do not talk bad about your ex-spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse. Children internalize that. If they look at you and look at your spouse and they see a part of them, a part of you in themselves. All right. So if you start talking bad about the other parent, then the child might think that, oh, something must be wrong with me if something's wrong with my parent. Divorce is an adult topic. So it's natural. Your kids are going to have questions, okay? In order to transition back or into a new normal, it's very important that you allow the children to ask questions and just tell them that, these are adult topics and you don't need to worry about it. We're going to take care of everything. All right, just reassure them things are going to be okay. And eventually you'll get through this and time will heal and your children will get back to a routine. Now, if you've got any questions about divorce, I really want to help you. Please just book a consultation with me or one of my attorneys, and we'll be glad to guide you down the path and shed some light on some of these topics for you.